Sunday morning, everybody. I'm Mark Zinni in this morning for Eric Parker. We begin our program this morning with the deaths of Bristol Police Lieutenant Dustin DeMonte and Sergeant Alex Hamzy. They were the officers you wanted to be out protecting you in your local community. And on their final call, that's exactly what they were doing. Their service and honor will be remembered at memorials here in Connecticut and in Washington, D.C. Bill Alexander is the executive director of the National Law Enforcement Memorial, the Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington. Bill, thank you very much for being here this morning.
Mark, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let me ask you for your reaction. Obviously, it's a very difficult time for so many people. And when you heard about what happened in Bristol, what were your thoughts?
You know, Mark, it's just absolutely heart-wrenching. It's so tragic and unfortunately increasingly more common as we continue this year in terms of the officers who are killed fatally by gunfire. So on behalf of the Memorial Fund, our deepest condolences to everyone who knew and loved and worked with those two heroes.
And Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but so far this year, 56 police officers, is that true?
Yes, 56 year to date have been killed by gunfire. Last year we had 65, and I feel like based on the trends we've had so far this year, we are likely to push past the number we had last year, which is, you know, certainly concerning for the individual officers and also concerning for the organizations they work for.
Why do you think we're seeing that increase?
You know, I think it's a number of factors. I think the long tail of COVID. I think the inflationary increased expenses and, you know, just people having much greater friction and challenges in their lives. And also, there's just no question that there is a degree, whether perceived or real, there is a narrative increasingly in popular media and social media, which seems to want to ascribe to police departments, police officers and the departments they work for, some level of culpability, perhaps more than is warranted. So, you know, we here at the Memorial Fund, we're not saying that officers can't make mistakes or don't make mistakes or that law enforcement has nothing to atone for over the last 100 years. But we feel very fundamentally that law enforcement has been and continues to be a force for good. And to the extent that the narrative across the country seems to be pushing in a direction that demonizes to some degree police officers and their profession and then ascribes to them some you know, that they're to blame, that they are a greater extent of the problem. I think that permeates to some degree some portion of the population who might otherwise be inclined to fight or resist or to resort to some level of force when police officers are trying to restore order.
I will tell you, we've certainly seen a remarkable outpouring of support over the past several days since the tragic shooting of these officers. In many ways, I would imagine it's beautiful to see, but it's so unfortunate that it has to happen that way.
Yeah, you know, these deaths, every single officer who is killed in the line of duty just ripples through the communities they serve. And it's, again, so tragic. It is great to see an outpouring of support. And you know, we here at the Memorial Fund, we believe wholeheartedly that most of America and most of the citizens of our country are in support of law enforcement. And to the degree that people can come out and support, to the degree that people can see an officer on the street and thank him or her for the service that they're providing, we recognize that as a very, very important part of the grieving process. And, you know, so again, our heartfelt condolences to everyone in Connecticut, but we hope that in part, the support that is being shown over this last weekend is the first step of many in terms of allowing those who knew and loved these officers to heal.
Your organization certainly does a lot, even a museum, right? Let's talk a little about it. What is your primary focus?
We have three pillars in the Memorial Fund, one of which is the memorial, a very sacred space for us. It occupies 3 acres of land right here in Washington, D.C. It's one of the most humbling experiences I've ever been able to participate in. Every single morning I walk through the memorial walls and I look at the 23,229 names inscribed on these walls, and unfortunately, and counting, I must add as an asterisk, heroes, every single one, more than 23,000 men and women who have served and sacrificed everything in support of the communities that they serve and their country. So that, for us, honoring the fallen, honoring that sacrifice, telling the stories of the men and women who have come before and sacrificed everything, that is the mission of the memorial. We also have a world-class museum here, and the mission of the museum is to tell the story of American law enforcement through a variety of very progressive, very innovative exhibits. We encourage anyone and everyone who's in the DC area to come see us, visit this really amazing museum. And the final pillar is our officer safety and wellness pillar. where we try to pull apart the data that we collect across the every single year. We're the leading authority on line of duty death across the nation for United States law enforcement. And we try to look at that data and pull apart trends and patterns and try to identify where officers are coming into friction points in the community, which ultimately leads to their death. So what lessons can we learn, and how can we translate those lessons into pushing out a message, pushing out some new training, pushing out some best practice to the police departments across the country that will hopefully save lives and keep names off the wall in future years.
Such an incredible mission. And every May, correct, you add new names, and sadly, this coming May, you will be adding the names of the 2 officers from Connecticut.
Yes, we actually inscribe all of the prior year and any historical deaths that we have discovered in about mid-April. And then we memorialize those names in a very sacred to us ceremony, the annual candlelight vigil, which is held every single May 13th on the National Mall. And so that will, of course, again take place in May of 2023. It's again open to the public, and we encourage everyone to come. But for the law enforcement community in particular, it really is a cathartic healing process. It's a very, very important part of the process in terms of recognizing and remembering those who gave everything.
Bill, before we let you go, what is one thing anyone can do to show their support for law enforcement?
I mentioned it before. If I can say anything that anyone remembers on this broadcast, I hope to plant a seed to say to people, please be mindful of the police officers in your community. Be mindful of the sacrifices that they continue to give back to their community every single day, whether that's ongoing shift work, working the midnight shift, missing birthdays and holidays with their family, and then obviously in the hopefully rare, but still too often cases, such as, the 2 officers have just been killed locally there, they give everything. So please find your local police officer and just thank them. Say, hey, I appreciate you. I appreciate your profession. I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for everything that you have done and are doing. We hope that that's the seed people will remember.
Bill Alexander from the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.